Welcome, Rev Judith Elia. Let me give you a little bit of information. Rev Judith Elia is an ordained Unity minister serving diverse congregations for over 30 years. She has traveled widely to study with spiritual teachers from Cambodia, China, India, Tibet, and Turkey. She has organized conferences and events internationally for world peace. She has holistic medicine and the spiritual unity of the world's religions. She recently retired for her birthday as the Senior Minister of Unity of Port Richey, and she is repurposing herself, serving the Tent of Nations and the Palestinian Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability in Bethlehem in occupied Palestine this summer. She has also recently visited Dharma centers and eco-villages in northern Israel, founded by her Buddhist Jewish friend. She will report from her experience with hiking boots on the ground this summer in Israel and occupied Palestine. Reverend Judy, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for asking me, Beth. Okay, so let me just begin by saying that I am in Bethlehem in Palestine at the moment, and I have been here for almost 2 months now, and I'll be here for 3 more weeks. And I have had very diverse experiences, and I'm going to give you little vignettes of each. Many of you may have heard this poem before, but it's a good place to start, as it's a place where this passion for being in Palestine really was kindled in my heart. And that is October 7th, when so much began to happen in Gaza. And many of you, I'm sure, have watched on social media people die, and so many villages and so many entire universities and so many people whose lives are just irreplaceable. And this person, Rafayat al-Arir, he was a significant person in a lot of people's lives that were connected to the movement to free Palestine from apartheid militarized rule. And he was a poet, and as you can see from this right up here, a dad, a writer, and he decided he was going to stay in Palestine to take care of children who had lost their parents in this genocide. And before he died, he wrote this poem. So if it's the first time you're hearing it, just open your heart. If you've heard this a number of times, just listen with the ears of your heart. If I must die, you must live, to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings, make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza will, looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale. I was in a taxi today, and it seems that everywhere I go, I'm getting wisdom from people that I meet in the streets and that I work with as volunteers, or that drive me places, like this taxi driver. And he just simply said, because we were talking about how difficult it can be to get around from place to place because of all of the rules that you can or cannot drive on this road, or this road has been closed since October 7th. So there's a lot of drama around roads. There's Israeli-only roads, and there's roads that are so horrible that our country actually built for Palestinians only, because they can't go on Israeli roads. I never knew that. And there's these big signs everywhere, U.S. aid for these terrible, dangerous, horrible roads that Palestinians are forced to drive in. And so this man said to me, when we were talking about this situation, he said, we have to just accept that this is the way things are and not let it get to us. This is a Palestinian man driving me in a taxi that is just crazy, busy traffic in a tiny little road that was never made for a car. He said, and then he said, in God's time, it'll change. And I have to believe that, I have to have that in my heart, that there is something going on here all over the world, because we're so focused on Palestine, and it seems like it is just incredible resilience, incredible hope, incredible honor and valor that we're seeing in the Palestinian people. So let me begin by saying that I never in a million years thought I would be here in Bethlehem. It wasn't a place I ever wanted to go. I know that sounds crazy, but I just never had a pull to go to the quote unquote sacred sites of this religious tradition we call Christianity. I honestly didn't believe they were real, and I didn't think I'd get anything out of it. I was much more interested in going to India and Turkey and different places than I ever was going to this place I used to call the Holy Land or the Middle East that can't stop fighting. And that was about the level at which I understood what was going on here before I met Mazen and Jesse Kumsier. They were the first Palestinian Christians I ever met. Actually, Mazen was born in the Shepherd's Field, and he is a Palestinian. His wife, Jessie, is Chinese, but they are living in Palestine. So regardless of the fact that they are American citizens, Mazen taught at Ivy League institutions like Yale, Duke, University of Tennessee. He's an eminent biologist. Regardless of that fact that both of them are American citizens and graduates of American universities, because they live in Palestine, they're considered by this government, the Israeli government, to be Palestinian. So they can't drive on Israeli roads and they can't travel. Like, I can go to Jerusalem because I'm an internationalist. I'm an American who isn't living in Palestine. I have a visa. So I can go to Jerusalem, but Mazen, Professor Mazen Kumsier cannot, and his wife cannot. So there are all these bizarre rules that I'm constantly asking, what? Why? And all these road closures, like the Tent of Nations, which is a place that I have worked at. And it is an organic farm on a very high piece of land that Israel would like to get its hands on. But it has been in the Nasser family for over 130 years or something. And so far, the illegal settlers have not been able to take it over. But to get there, which is just a 7-minute drive from Bethlehem, because now all these roads are closed because, I don't know, after October 7th, they wanted to make it difficult, even more difficult for Palestinian people, make it easier for settlers to take their land. I guess that's the reason. I can't think of any other reason why they would close all these roads and now make it 40 minutes of horrible driving to get from Bethlehem to the Tent of Nations, which is really only 7 minutes by car. So trying to wrap your mind around those kind of day-to-day limitations and the many limited laws and rules around being a Palestinian, and also the presence of the military and the history of horrifying violence against Palestinians randomly in the West Bank and up and down Palestine since 70 years, since the original, what they call the Nakba, which was a massacre of people and a forced movement of people out of their homes at gunpoint. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. 750,000 people were forcefully moved out of their homes and villages. And this has been going on for a very long time. And recently, I'll just give you a personal experience that I had. Recently, I went with Dr. Mazen Kumsier and his wife, Jessie, on a research trip to gather information about birds and bats, because that's what Mazen does. He loves mammals, and he has an area of expertise with bats and birds. And this place we call Bethlehem, and this whole place we call the Fertile Crescent, is like an amazing place for birds. 1 million birds fly through the Fertile Crescent every year, rare birds, endangered birds, all kinds of species that we probably have never even heard of. So that's what Mazen does. He studies them. And there's this reserve in Palestine that is in Palestine, not in Israel, in what was agreed upon to be this land called Palestine, this state called Palestine at one time, but was never, it was agreed upon, in the Oslo Accords, but it was never really followed by the Israeli government. So we went to do some research on land that is supposed to be for this type of thing, protected land, Palestinian land, and were met by settlers and at gunpoint. And they had, on either sides of this road, set up date farms. And I'm talking huge date farms, probably making a lot of money on these dates, is real dates. And so the first guy that stopped us didn't have a gun, but he wanted to know what we were doing on his property. On this road that is supposed to be a Palestinian road that cuts through these illegal settlements where we were studying bats and birds. And he went and got his security, which was a guy with an M16. And the guy said, 2 Palestinians with women. He called it into the police station, and they looked up who we were, and affirmed that, in fact, we were who we said we were. And in fact, Mazen was a professor at Bethlehem University. In fact, he does research on bats and birds. But he's also been arrested a number of times, 4 times, for trying to save a 4,000-year-old tree, the oldest olive tree in Palestine. And with 50 of his friends, he tried to save this tree. And I went to see that tree. There are now people protecting that tree 24/7 because the Israeli government does crazy things like plow down fields of olive groves and wanted to kill a 4,000-year-old tree to put a road through it. So as far as my personal view of this place I'm at that I never expected to be, it's a shock. It's a shock on so many levels. And I titled this The People's Peace Project, because what I started out doing when I got here and went to an eco-village that was founded by some Buddhist Jewish friends of mine called Cleo Village, was to start interviewing people and asking them their thoughts and prayers about the situation in Palestine. And so if you go on my YouTube channel, you'll see a couple of those. And you'll also see kind of testimonials from students from Union Theological Seminary, Columbia University encampments, Santa Barbara encampments, UCLA encampments, who all came over to this conference called Christ at the Checkpoint, and then joined me to volunteer at Tent of Nations to be like human shields. Because if there are international people on the land, the settlers won't take it. And so for the last few decades, there have been people staying at the Tent of Nations to try and keep that land safe. So I interviewed them, and that was the beginning of my People's Peace Project, but I have not been able to continue it because I've been working to take care of animals for the Kumsiers at the Palestine Institute for Biodiversity and Sustainability at Bethlehem University. And so I've had the great good fortune of taking care of a baby red fox, a couple of endangered striped hyenas, flurry of birds and ducks and chicks and all kinds of at the Tent of Nations. We called him our occupied dog because he was in a cage and they were afraid to let him out because they thought that he would be shot by settlers or poisoned or whatever. So I helped to train him to stay with the family so he could be freed from occupation and out of that cage. And his name is Max, and he's doing really well. And cats and kittens and baby chicks and baby ducks. Just yesterday, I was at Tent of Nations on my day off from the Palestine Institute to help to build a structure for their hens and ducks and chicks. So there's just a lot to do every day. And videography was not at the top of my list, but I'm going to get back to it. I believe in my heart that most people in Palestine that I meet are people of peace and that pray every day for an end to the occupation, an end to the war, and for peace in the hearts of the people of Israel. I also believe that the Jewish people have been severely propagandized. Many Jews are waking up to that. There are these things that you probably all know about, like birthright. I came over on a plane filled with young people that were going to this thing called birthright, where you eventually become part of the IDF because you're so on fire with the passion of Zionism and the perpetrated lies about what that is. And it's a problem because it takes a lot for the cognitive dissonance of what becomes this serious propaganda to wake up from. It's like anything, like, I don't know if you remember, but I do, waking up to history when I went to college and I realized that the history I'd been taught in high school was not history. It was just dates. It was just presidents. It was just American propaganda. And I started to do social history and women's history and intellectual history and Native American history and Black history and get a bigger point of view. But if all you've ever been taught is this is the truth about what it means to be a Jew and what it means to have a place like Israel to protect you, then it takes a very long time, I think, to wake up from that trauma. And I think it is a trauma, a psychological trauma, and but not an excuse. I personally am totally over that. You know, if you claim to be a Jew, then you ought to be following the 10 Commandments. That's what I say to people that say, like, but what about Hamas? You funded it. That's what I say to them. This government funded it. And it became what it became. But killing and ecocide and destroying entire university systems and the oldest churches and synagogues, some of them in our world, and all this that was built in Gaza, even in the midst of apartheid, this beautiful place was built. To destroy that and to kill and starve people, there's no one that can call themselves a Jew and do that. So I don't accept that anymore. I have zero tolerance for the Holocaust card. You do not become a victim and stay a victim because your parents were a victim. That isn't healthy. And if we don't stop Israel from doing what they're doing now, it's going to only come back to haunt us and continue to endanger them, both physically and psychologically, because they are psychopathic beyond measure. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see it, that they're talking about themselves. That's what happens when you begin to believe your own lies. I'll give you a couple of facts from the ground here, hiking boots on the ground. The settlers, and I mean Israeli settlers, colonial settlers, have clear-cut the land, destroyed the habitat, got rid of the olive trees, the fruit and nut trees that were here for thousands of years, and planted pine trees, which have no value to this habitat and are fire hazards. That's kind of stupidity, is just beyond comment. Most of Israel, from Tel Aviv up to Haifa, looks like New York City or the suburbs of Chicago gone bad. It's like the exportation of our Western view of a city. When I got on a train for the first time from Tel Aviv, going all the way up to the last train stop where my friends have the Eco Village, I thought, like you were traveling through Europe, that there would be rolling hills. All there is from Tel Aviv to Haifa is industrial waste, cement, cars that are being pressed into tin because they have so many cars. They don't know what to do with them. It's a dumping ground for waste, and it is devoid of trees, livestock, gardens. In fact, in Tel Aviv, everyone has a dog in the little university part of Tel Aviv that I stayed in, but there are no dog parks. There are no trees. There's no place for the dogs to pee. So they train them to pee in pots, in your neighbor's pots with their plants. It is the goofiest thing you have ever seen. And it's just a symbol for me of what it must be like to live in a place where you're gated and locked and separated by walls, and there's nothing green. But there's great restaurants and nice boutiques. For me, it's the exportation of the negative values of the West. In the first 2 months of the Gaza genocide, Israeli bombs produced more greenhouse gases than most countries produce in 1 year. And that was just in the first 2 months. Over 70% of the green cover in Gaza has been destroyed. Under the rubble, rotting bodies, industrial and military waste, cluster bombs, particulate matter, waste pollution, that it will take decades for it to be safe for human, plant, or animal habitation. We, and I say we because we've funded it, it's our bombs made in the USA, have destroyed a habitat, a culture, a people, a place of significance, because it is the Fertile Crescent, the place where actually agriculture was birthed. It ought to be one of those national historic places, and a place rich with biodiversity. We've contaminated it. We've clear cut it. We've turned it into a military killing machine, and it has literally blown up in our face. The good news is the next generation is not having it. So I'd like Beth to play just a 1-minute clip of one person from Columbia University who came to the Tent of Nations. I think Peter has some clarity on the voice of the next generation.
Hi everybody, my name is Peter. I'm here at the Tent of Nations, the Nasser family farm here in the West Bank. It felt incredibly important to come right now during this time of genocide of the Palestinian people and experience, not firsthand, but as close to possible, what the oppression of Palestinians looks like. It's been extremely moving just to hear the Nasser family story, the way that they've been defending this land for 33 years through the courts and facing all these hurdles that the Israeli government puts in their way to live in peace, to experience Israeli settlers and their aggression on Palestinian people. And yeah, it's just it has a profound impact on my being to experience it in person. I hope that everybody that's listening will take the time to better understand the struggle of Palestinian people, to become acquainted with and get to know Palestinians, and do everything that you possibly can in order to stop this genocide and the systems that make this genocide possible, not only possible, but fundamental to the economic systems of the powers that be. Thank you.
So that's Peter, who's been arrested many times for trespassing on his own college, for peaceful protesting and encampments, for his stand for Palestinian justice and an end to apartheid. The next person, I really am grateful that I met her, because unfortunately, too many of our religious leaders do not speak out on behalf of Palestine. And this minister does and has, and she's awesome.
Hi, my name is Susan Wilder. I'm a Presbyterian minister from Virginia, and I'm here at the Tent of Nations to volunteer on this Palestinian Farm and Peace Center. This hilltop is much desired by the Israeli settlers, and on all the surrounding hilltops you see settlements. So as a volunteer, along with my other volunteers who are here, we're kind of like human shields, but also getting a chance to do some farming and learn a lot. It's such a beautiful and peaceful place. And with that, I'd like to say a prayer for this peace to spread to all this land. God be with the people of this land, whoever they are. All are human. It doesn't matter, Israeli, Palestinian, religious or not religious. Everyone is a beloved child of yours, and we pray that they could all flourish. Show each and every one of us our part in your plan of making this world, restoring it to your good creation. In your name we pray, amen.
So I know that I have gone over my time, and I just want you to know that even though I've been sharing with you some very abysmal news and facts about the situation, I do really have a lot of hope because of all these people that I meet who are coming from all over the world to help these people at the Tent of Nations and at Bethlehem University and in many different organizations. I'm seeing constantly tours of people, interfaith groups, the Mennonites, they do an amazing work here, and so many other religious and political groups. So I do have hope, but I hope that my presentation today will inspire you to do more deep research into the history of Palestine and what you can do now to free the Palestinian people from apartheid.